Next school we're talking about here is the TCU Horned Frogs. So yes, they had a hangover in 2023 with a 5-7 record after making it all the way to the national title game in 2022. TCU did bounce back this past year, though, with a 9-4 record that included a New Mexico Bowl victory over Louisiana. Both the offense and the defense really pulled their weights last year. You can see both of them with 80-plus PFF grade right there. They're both top 40 in PFF grade and EP per play in offense and defense. And both units have pretty good players and pretty good pieces returning, too. The offense is one of the best quarterbacks in the Big 12 in Josh Hoover, and some really nice weapons for him to throw to. And the defense has a really good secondary, Dalton, headlined by a top 10 safety in Bud Clark.
Absolutely, and that's a unit that you're looking at, and you're like, wow, that was really improved, in part because of Clark moving from the slot to free safety last year, but you're also getting a transfer corner and Elijah Jackson going, and I think this was very quietly. I think they have a top 10 coverage grade in the country last year. Fifth in the country in coverage grade last year. So you got a team. We've talked about a lot of teams that can run and stop the run. This team can pass and stop the pass, and the improvement in that secondary. And honestly, does it feel like TCU kind of went under the radar last year? I know a lot of people have talked about Baylor and Sawyer Robertson and them getting hot down the stretch, but it feels like one of the stories that got looked over in college football last year was the bounce back after the hangover of TCU and going out there and going 9-4 last year. This is a team that, look, they got a tough schedule, but led by this secondary and a potentially explosive offense, they could contend in the Big 12. I think their ability to pass and stop the pass is as good as anybody in this conference.
I would agree with that. Yeah, their coverage unit is really good, which is good considering their biggest weakness is their pass rush right now. Horned Frogs had a 26.3% pressure rate last year. That was the 6th worst mark in the Power 4. And the other problem is they really didn't do much in the transfer portal to address that issue either. So it's good they have a really good secondary because they need that, or else his pass defense will completely fall apart. But their pass rush right now is just kind of lacking.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like you mentioned, it's great to have the great secondary like that to give them time. So if somebody could emerge for them up front, that would be fantastic because they're playing a lot of good quarterbacks this year. You don't want to leave clean pockets and expose your secondary too often. But no, they need to find a way to get more pressure up front. It's really hard to win big games when you're not getting enough, when you're not disrupting quarterbacks enough in the pocket.
Definitely, Dalton. So let's talk more about what might be the second best quarterback in the Big 12 next year in Josh Hoover. Where would you rank him?
I'll tell you, I think he's got an argument. I think Josh Hoover was, out of all the 68 quarterbacks that I watched, or 68-plus quarterbacks that I watched for this process, he was one of the more intriguing ones. 13th best passing grade in the country. I think that just gets completely overlooked. When you look at Josh Hoover, his ability to throw the ball down the middle of the field is what really impresses me, right? There's certain quarterbacks that just have that ability to fire it down the middle. 91.5 passing grade down the middle third of the field last year. 5th best in the country. You're talking about the elite guys, the Shedeur Sanders and Jackson Darts and guys who are putting up huge numbers over the middle of the field. Jake Retzlaff was another one last year for BYU. I talked about this with, when you can win down the middle of the field, you're at a huge advantage. You see the slants and seam routes and deep posts that TCU, and he does it quickly too. He's got one of the fastest average time to throws in the country. So I think when you talk about Josh Hoover, they want to get explosive, but they want to do it quickly. He's really good at doing that. Now, he doesn't give you a lot of improvising, and his look-offs and his eyes and manipulating defenders could be a little bit better. 10 of his 18 turnover-worthy plays came against man coverage, so he can kind of stare down guys in man coverage and kind of not be sure where to go. He's a lot better against zone than man, but I think you're talking about a quarterback that's underrated. We didn't talk about this TCU team a lot last year, as they were kind of out of the playoff race early, but Hoover, as the season went on, got a lot better, and I like his ability to attack down the middle of the football field.
Yeah, he had the 2nd best passing grade in the Big 12 last year. The only one who was higher was Shedeur Sanders, right? So I would make the argument he's probably the 2nd best quarterback in the conference behind Sam Leavitt right now going into next year. And he has a really good weapon to throw to in Eric McAllister. And yes, they did lose a lot from that receiving core in Savion Williams and Jack Besh and J.P. Richardson. But they also have a really good receiver returning in Eric McAllister. He was really good at Boise State in 2023, and he got even better at TCU this past year despite the jump up in competition level. 84.1 receiving grade, was 3rd among all Big 12 receivers. The only two who had more were Tedder McMillan and Jaden Higgins, and both those guys were top 35 picks in the 2025 NFL Draft. Eric McAllister also was second in the Big 12, both in yards per route run and with 8.9 yards after the catch per reception. So, like I said before, Besh with Williams and Richardson, all three of them now in the NFL. I really think Eric McAllister can have a huge breakout year as the top option, unquestionably, for Josh Hoover next year.
He's their number one. Another player I'm going to give you to look at is Joe Manjack, who's coming in from Houston. I think that was a solid pickup to get. He's been a solid starter down there for Houston for the last couple of years and now coming into TCU. But no, McAllister, is clearly the number one guy here. Again, really good at Boise State, really good last year for TCU. He's going to be the top target in this offense.
But Dalton, the star player probably this entire team is Bud Clark, who was phenomenal last year.
Yeah, and you just love to see a guy who maybe had been struggling in a different role and then moves positions and finds the ideal role in this defense. And now that he's playing free safety instead of in the nickel, he really took off last year. 90.1 coverage grade, led all qualified safeties, and he was the third most valuable safety in the country behind Caleb Downs and Michael Taft, who are two absolute superstars, right? What he sets up for their defense as a free safety and even coming down to hit, I'll tell you what, he's a heat-seeking missile when he's coming down towards the line of scrimmage too. Bud Clark is a really versatile player that you're going to hear about in next year's NFL draft as a free safety, and even that experience as a nickel can help him a little bit down towards the box and if they need him to play man-to-man, but love the way the position switch really worked for him last year. He's in his ideal spot now, and he's the center fielder in that defense who's going to do a lot of things around the ball for them.
Yeah, 90.1 coverage grade, the best in the country last year, and then also was the third most valuable returning power force safety, the only two above him, Caleb Downs and Michael Taft, who were two top 5 safeties in the country. Bud Clark is a top 10 safety in the nation heading into next year. Dalton, after a great year last year with a 9-4 record overall, their win total right now is at 6.5. Now, of course, they do have the hardest schedule in the Big 12 according to our power rankings, but are you taking the over or the under for the Horned Frogs here?
I think I'm going to take the over. That feels a little low to me. We'll see if they're one of the prime contenders or somewhere in between that like they were last year. But tell you what, they got a fun one in week 1, too, going to North Carolina, being the first college team to ever face Bill Belichick. That's going to be a fun one. And then they've got SMU a few weeks later, who SMU dominated them last year. But you're talking about, okay, revenge game back in Fort Worth. Let's see where it goes, especially with all the pieces SMU has lost. But it is a tough schedule, but I think they can get over 6.5. I think they can do that. We'll see if they can win enough games to get into prime contention in that 9-10 win range, but 6.5 feels attainable to me. I'm going to take the over for them, and I think especially if they go into North Carolina and they kind of shut down that hype train, the Belichick hype train a little bit, and start off 1-0 and then probably 2-0. And then look, SMU, they've lost a lot of pieces. You never know where it goes week to week, especially in the Big 12. So I'm going to take over 6.5 on TCU. I think they get to at least 7.
Yeah, there's a chance that it starts off rocky for them. You know, there's a chance they lose to Bill Belichick week 1 and then they lose to SMU and Arizona State a couple weeks after that. So 1-3 is possible, but I'm also taking 6.5, man. I think over 6.5 because I think there's a lot of talent on this team, both offensively and defensively. In that coverage unit, in that their quarterback is one of the best in the conference too, and Eric McAllister is a really good player too. If they improve in the trenches, both offensive line and defensive line, yeah, they could absolutely go well over the 6.5 win total and maybe even be a surprise contender in the Big 12 next year.
When we talk about the Big 12 having a lot of 50-50 games, it's going to feel like TCU's in one every single week. And it's just going to be, well, are they going to win or no? And I'm like, well, let me just check how they played last week and see where we're going here. And again, obviously, there's always injuries and luck and the ball bouncing a certain way. But they're one of the teams, them and Baylor feel like the two where it's like, we're right in between on you. Are you? Are you not? Are you going to win enough close games to be in prime contention? Obviously, we're going to find out the hard way. But I think 7 or 8 for them is certainly attainable, especially after winning 8 during the regular season last year.
Definitely. Yes, I'm taking the over on TCU, over 6.5. Dalton's also taking the over for them there too. Hey, thanks for watching another episode of the PFF College Football Show. Please make sure you guys subscribe to the channel.
Also, subscribe to PFF Plus at subscribe.pff.com for all of the same data and grades that we use in our show, plus fantasy tools, betting tools, and our mock draft simulator.